Hi, this is Rick Batista here from School Street Social and interviewing Nick Scarpinato, who's one of the performers actually last year. And we asked him to come back this year because he just did an awesome job on the stage. And just wanted to have a moment to ask him a few questions so everybody can get to know him a little bit better. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Rick. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me again at School Street. I last year was so fun. It was probably one of the highlights of my summer. The ice cream truck helped,
Yeah,
but
very fun.
also getting to be there with so many wonderful folks from the community and to perform with the musicians that I got to play with. That was a dream. So I'm very excited to come back this year and very grateful.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you back without a doubt. Um, I wanted to ask you a few questions here. I wrote some things down. We'll see where the conversation goes, but
Yeah.
if we can kind of start back, go back to the beginning. I had read that you started your musical journey in middle school, and you had a
I,
friend that wanted to, somebody to jam with, and just wondering like how did all that begin?
Yeah, so it was good old fashioned peer pressure,
Okay.
especially around that time, middle school. I feel like peer pressure was the only thing that anyone could do to get me to go out and enjoy
Yeah.
myself and have fun, because I was a very shy kid. So I had a buddy of mine, my best friend at the time. He was very much the person who led the way. He was in the lead all the time, and he started playing guitar. Like you said, he was looking for someone to jam with. And I said, yeah, okay. I was very
Yeah.
gullible, very easy
Sure.
to lead. And eventually, the I'll try to keep it as brief as possible because there are a lot of steps along the way. But slowly but surely, playing music got me more and more out of my shell. And as I found more people within my community that liked playing music, listening to music, I was able to build a network of really cool people and collaborators that would go on to support me throughout my journey in college and my journey, 5 years since I graduated college. Here we are, and I'm still very, I'm still good friends with a lot of those people that I met. So, but yeah, it all started with one person wanting to build that community with me. So you're probably going to hear me mention that word a lot because I
Yeah.
think it is super important to my journey as a musician personally. Yeah,
Community.
community. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah. It could have been any word in that in
Yeah.
that sentence, but you got the
No,
right one.
I get it. No, yeah, no, communities. I mean, that's a huge thing. I mean, that's why we do schools for social, and in our business, we're trying to help form and shape better communities. Because I
Mhm.
mean, especially, I mean, I don't want to go down any political rabbit hole, but that the in Chicago and across the country, we've had quite a quite a few interesting years,
Yeah,
and I think community people are just really craving that sense of a community. And I think in so many ways people are going back to how things were before, which we got so far away from, and realizing that maybe our grandparents and great grandparents kind of had it figured out, when things were a little quote unquote simpler. But
sure.
yeah, no, but community is a word that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
What kind of like songs and music were you writing or playing at the time?
So at the time, I was listening to. Luckily, my music preferences haven't changed a whole lot, so I'm still
Mm-hmm.
able to play those songs that I wrote back then and not cringe too hard
Yeah.
listening
Okay,
to the
that's
stuff that I
awesome.
was inspired by. But I was in middle school. I was a huge metalhead, so I was
Okay.
listening to a lot of '80s hair metal
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like Metallica and Megadeth. And my dad was super into bands like AC/DC and Motley Crue. And my mom was and still is very into country music. So she was listening to a lot of Rascal Flatts in the car and Keith
Mm-hmm.
Urban and Shania Twain. So eventually, I combined those two sensibilities with my sort of pop sensibilities that I let myself enjoy pop music on the radio after
Yeah.
I moved away from those metalhead friends who pressured me into only listening to
Yeah.
the stuff that they were
Was it
listening
like a
to.
little taboo?
Yeah, right. It
Yeah.
was, the wildest part was I had a couple of friends who denounced the Beatles. And
Oh,
I don't
wow.
know why. I
Yeah.
don't know why, but I refused to listen to any Beatles until I wasn't hanging out with them as much
Hmm.
anymore. And it was only then that I discovered, hey, so pop catchy music can be good, and
Yeah.
I like it, and it doesn't have to have a 5 minute guitar solo at the end, and it doesn't have to be
Hmm.
about darkness and death and all of these
Yeah.
scary things. So so yeah, but a lot of Foo Fighters at the time, a lot of let's see, a lot of stuff that was on the radio around like 2010, 2011. So like Ellie Goulding and Ed Sheeran, and so
Yeah.
a lot of different influences for sure.
Yeah. That's interesting. I wanted to ask you about Foo Fighters because I know you've done quite a few of their covers. What was the first song that you heard of theirs or fell in love with of theirs?
Oh man, first song, it was probably Learn to Fly
Okay.
from their There's Nothing Left to Lose album. It was one of those that it was a song that I was exposed to and gravitated towards because it was different enough from the stuff that I was listening to at the time. Because the Foo
Hmm.
Fighters, they have a lot of heavy things, they have a lot of screamy songs, but Learn to Fly was a very up the middle, like pop rock record. I don't know if a lot of people would call it pop rock, but it's very catchy. And
Yeah.
it kind of opened the door for me to start writing music like that, where I was still indulging the musician in me who liked heavy music and big drums and big guitars, but the melodies specifically of Learn to Fly were so catchy and they would get in my head all the time. And so I told myself then and there, after listening to the Foo Fighters for the first time, I was like, I want to write music like that. I want to write
Yeah.
music with a big band that people could listen to in a stadium, but also want to sing with their friends driving down the road with the windows down. And yeah, so Learn to Fly was a big one for me.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
I mean, people check out your YouTube channel. You've
Mm-hmm.
definitely covered quite a few of their songs. What's your favorite one to perform?
Ooh, so my favorite one to perform, I think, is Best of You, which if for those who haven't heard the song or aren't super familiar, Dave Grohl, the singer of the Foo Fighters, screams over pretty much the entire song.
Yeah.
And for me, that was a goal of mine, was to be able to sing that song. And eventually I got there, but in order to do so, I needed to tear my voice to shreds a couple of times and
Hmm.
try to scream.
Yeah.
So that's probably my favorite to play, but the one that I'd say I play most often, because it's also so fun. I play Everlong a lot.
Yeah.
The big one that everyone knows,
Yeah.
and it's cool because I feel like that song has found a second life on TikTok,
Hmm.
and I'm very grateful as a musician that does a lot of like 90s and like early 2000s music in my sets, because kids that are this generation, they'll go on TikTok and they'll rediscover these songs and they'll
Yeah.
play them for their friends, and then they get popular because they get sped up a little
Yeah.
bit, and then they're used as sounds on TikTok or what have you, and so it helps me a lot when I'm playing at bars where like a family will come and then one of their teenage kids like looks over at
Yeah.
me and they're like, hey, that's a song from TikTok.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's that's one way of looking at
Yeah.
it.
It's yeah, it's always interesting. I mean, I've done it before too, I mean, because the songs have been sampled for decades, you know.
Oh yeah.
But I guess when you're older, you seem a little cooler because no kid, that's a song from this and this year. But
Yeah. You gotta one up them. I always
is,
do.
is there a Foo Fighter song that you haven't covered yet, but you'd love to?
There's actually one that just came out today, and I listened to it earlier, and I think it's called Under You.
Hmm.
And I heard it, and like a lot of the more recent Foo Fighters stuff that have come out, albums that have come out, I enjoy, but there isn't ever a single song on there that I hear and I'm like, immediately I need to cover that. I need to learn that.
Yeah.
And this song is the first time in probably years that I've heard a new Foo Fighters thing, and I'm like, I need to cover that right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's called Under You,
Okay.
and I know this whole new record is I can assume it's primarily written around the passing of their drummer, their longtime drummer, Taylor
Hmm.
Hawkins.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the songs on this album that are coming out, it's coming out in June, I think June 6th, should be very cathartic to listen to. I don't know if I'm emotionally prepared to listen to the whole
Yeah.
thing front to back, but I got to do it as a fan,
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I mean, I love music and I've listened to music for years, and I had grown up in a generation where it was still like albums where the album, so many albums told a story from beginning to end,
Right.
and now it's a lot of it is just singles, which awesome singles, but it was so
Yeah.
fun to, if you were listening to something on vinyl or listening to something on cassette, to like pull out the cover and read the lyrics or kind of read along with the songs and stuff like that. And so hopefully, I mean, I haven't heard their new stuff yet, but hopefully it'll be like a kind of an album that tells a story, So
Agreed. Yeah.
awesome. So when you are listening to music and songs in particular,
Mm-hmm.
I'm an average person. I don't, I barely play the radio, but
Yeah.
I did play the piano at one time, and I never even learned notes or anything like that. I just played by memory.
Yeah.
But
That's still incredible.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's impressive, but I think learning notes and composing
Mm.
is just absolutely fantastic. So, as a singer and a songwriter, how would you say that you're able to hear, listen to, and appreciate songs versus somebody who doesn't have all the skills?
I love this question because every time I think about it, I have to realize I think as a songwriter, as someone who has to craft songs from the ground up, it's sort of more of a curse than anything. I
Yeah.
feel like being a musician listening to music is more of a burden. um and I think about this with my mom all the time when we're like listening to a new song or something. My first thought is always, what like how cool is the chord progression here, and like
Hmm.
what is this song doing to make it sound different and unique, and what can I like steal from it, like what production things can I try to emulate. And then I talked to my mom afterward, and she was like, yeah, that's a great song. And
Yeah.
I was like, so why do you think it's great? And she's like, I don't know, I just like it.
Yeah.
And I envy that a lot, just because I don't know. And I don't
The
know, I
simplicity
don't
of
know
it.
if this
Yeah.
makes
The simplicity of it. Yeah.
yeah. And it's just like I feel like I suck the joy out of out of listening to music sometimes.
Yeah.
But no, it's a different experience, because I feel like my brain my brain is always working harder than my heart is, which
Hmm.
you know is not a great thing as a musician, because ideally you want both of them working at the same time. But every once in a while I'll hear a song where the I like all my ear hears is the care and the craft that was put into writing and producing, and then my brain is like, all right, buddy, I'm gonna take a break, you can handle it from
Yeah.
here. And like my
Yeah.
heart's like, nah, you know what, I'm gonna do that. So
Yeah.
um so I don't know if that answers your question at all, but
No, it does. I mean,
um
it's yeah, it's you have a better sense of analyzing the song in
mm,
its entirety.
yeah,
But it definitely could be, I'm sure, a curse sometimes than
yeah.
than a blessing. And you can
Yeah,
appreciate it at a different level than other
right.
people.
Yeah, and then the cool part is when it's almost like I teach music lessons once a week. I teach voice lessons to beginner students, and so I end
Mm,
up working with a lot of kids.
awesome.
And I do a lot of lyric analysis with them, and I always try to encourage that critical thinking, as well as that I listen to it because I like it sort of thinking.
Hmm.
And a lot of times I'll describe doing that analysis as sort of I compare it to building Legos, right? Because
Hmm.
after you finish building a Lego, it's a toy that you can play with. But while you're building it, you sort of gain an appreciation for the end result, because
Yeah.
you've seen every step along the way of
Yeah.
how it's put together. So as a musician, as an artist, of any kind, when when you experience art for the first time, I feel like our brains usually try to figure out like what gears are working to
Yeah.
put this thing together. And the beautiful thing is it does add to the enjoyment of listening to a song by being able to say I like this song because
Yeah.
the low end of this recording is produced really well, and I can hear the tightness of the bass, or I like the lush vocal
Hmm.
harmonies happening in the left and right ears.
Hmm.
Um and uh so that there are layers to it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, two people can appreciate the same thing for,
Oh yeah.
I guess, I don't want to say different reasons, but one understands, one just knows they like it, and the other person knows, exactly why they like it.
Yeah, it's all about perspective,
Yeah.
you know.
Awesome. So of all the genres that you mentioned that you grew up with, and that
Mhm.
you have forced yourself to listen to,
Yeah.
are there any that you haven't ventured into playing or covering yet that you'd like to?
So I've been hearing a lot of folk Americana music recently. And I think that's just a byproduct of living in the suburbs. Because right now I'm based out of Aurora, and a lot of suburbs around me, like Lisle and
Hmm.
Naperville and Downers Grove, there are a lot of musicians who gravitate towards one another because they have similar writing styles. And
Yeah.
so you'll go to an open mic or you'll go to a songwriter showcase, and there are a lot of folk influences and a lot of older musicians that have been here for a little while.
Hmm.
And it's interesting to sort of have an interaction with two artists who come from very different musical backgrounds, because obviously we all have different upbringings and we all come from different places, and that's beautiful in itself. But then you have two folks who are artists and think about music in similar ways when like deconstructing it and stuff. And then that conversation is one of my favorite things about being part of a community like this. So I hear a lot of songs that are very melancholy and stripped down,
Hmm.
and I'm always listening to songs and envisioning what it's going to sound like with a full drum set or with walls of electric guitars. So I struggle sometimes trying to learn songs that are more stripped back and slowed down. And not that that's what all folk music is,
Yeah.
but um but yeah, whenever I think about areas that I can work on, folk music always pops up. Folk music and blues.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible blues musician. I can't play a blues progression to save my life, but
Yeah.
I like listening to it.
Yeah. No, wow, I love both those genres.
Mm-hmm.
In my teen years, actually, my real estate mentor, he was considerably older than me. We were like 30 plus years apart, and he grew up he was going to college in the 60s and stuff, like the Vietnam era. And
Sure.
yeah, I said if you ever watched the Animal House, it was very representative of college life at the time. And
Yeah.
but he was Irish and German, and he was very much into Irish music, the old folk,
Mhm.
songs of the rebellion and stuff like that. So that was kind of my brainwashing years
Yeah.
of listening to a lot of which that Irish music, and leads you into folk music and country folk and stuff like that. But and then
Yeah.
I fell in love with Simon and Garfunkel and stuff like that, and plenty of
Hmm.
artists at the time. So yeah, definitely it's great. I mean, between folk and blues, I think those genres definitely tell a story in their
Yeah.
sound. So
Yeah.
awesome. Um, I hate to bring up the P word, but
Sure.
we were kind of officially out of the pandemic. I know some people are still walking around with masks for good reason.
Yeah.
But during the pandemic, you mentioned community, and you do so much performing and going on to open mics and gigs and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that impacted you quite a bit. Do you feel the pandemic had a negative impact in any way in your artistic growth, or did it enhance it in some way?
So I feel like the answer is probably going to be different for everybody, and I don't want
Hmm.
to speak for all artists or musicians out there, but I think what the pandemic did for me first and foremost was it left me to it left me to be an observer, right? And I was not an active part of the world anymore because we couldn't leave our house. And
Hmm.
I, at the time, I always tell all my friends, or at least I did when the pandemic started, that I feel like I was right on the cusp of making a breakthrough right before that
Yeah.
happened. I had a gig where I was going to be opening for a touring act, and it was going to be on a big stage, and I was gigging more and more, and I was writing more, and I was just starting to record. And then, the everything happened. And
Yeah.
then and so I was forced to kind of put everything on hold, like everyone was,
Yeah.
and kind of look inward and reflect. And it was a very powerful time too, because I think that summer of the pandemic, there were all of the protests happening, and the George Floyd incident kind of sparked a lot of conversation in my household, because I was living with my
Hmm.
parents, and there was a lot of discourse, important discourse going on, that also caused me to think about my art, because I was asking myself, am I writing songs? Am I creating art for a cause beyond myself? Am I thinking about how my art is affecting the world, and am I making a lasting and positive impact with my
Hmm.
music? Um and so I feel like it was definitely harder at first, but the silver lining being, I think, once things started to open up, the community felt even stronger,
Yeah.
because we had all of that time apart and all of that time separated from one another and each other's music, that once it came time to play shows again and go to open mics, we were all that much more actively supportive of one another.
Yeah.
Primarily, because it was nice to get out and listen to our friends play music, but also because it took the world coming to a standstill to realize how important it is that each of us, acting as you know cogs in this big old art machine, how important it is that we are moving and active and
Yeah.
participating. Um so yeah, and I know when we had our social last year, I think that was the first summer, like after the pandemic, that everyone felt really comfortable being out and about.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, my first time playing in the city after everything had started opening up. So I
Oh,
for one was
nice.
super grateful for the community that you guys, that you and Frank, or Zach, I
Yeah.
always say Z
Z
Frank,
Frank. Yeah.
that you and Zach helped to cultivate that day.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. It's yeah, pandemic certainly impacted everyone, but I think the mindset, and it was certainly hard to keep a strong mindset
Yeah,
along the way, but you either came out of it better or you came out of it worse.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's individuality there, but that's good. There was a just a collective positive energy that was flowing
sure,
within your musical community, so that's awesome.
yeah.
Here's a fun question: have you ever
Okay.
serenaded anyone?
Yes,
Yeah,
I have serenaded a couple of people.
yeah,
Mostly, I had a girlfriend in college who I would play for, ever so frequently, or not ever so frequently, but once in a while, because I feel like musicians who have romantic partners, or even musicians who live at home and
mhm,
their family or their roommates are surrounded by the music, I feel like it's so much harder to ask someone who listens to me play every day to be like, hey,
yeah,
can I like play you a song? So it doesn't happen super often, but I like to think that whenever I play a show, I am serenading everybody who's
there you
watching.
go.
I don't play favorites. I don't play
Yeah,
favorites, Rick.
yeah,
I'm for the people.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Has there been a time where singing got you out of a troublesome or difficult situation?
Hmm. So I not realistic. So like every once in a while there will be an argument that I have with someone, mostly, I like my my family, if there's always something going on over at the house, so sometimes I'll call, and then my parents will be like, why are you driving all the way out here to do a show for like X amount of, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll, Saved by the Bell, I'm like, well, I gotta go. The gig starts in like 10 minutes. I just wanted to call and
Yeah.
see if you
Yeah.
guys were coming, blah, blah, blah. But I wouldn't say saved, more so like I just feel bad for three
Yeah.
hours because that conversation goes unresolved.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as non-gigging singing goes, um, every once in a while there will be like trying to cheer someone up
Mm-hmm.
where we're in the car or something. Just recently, I was in the car with my sister, who's like a year younger, and she was really going through it, and she wasn't talking, and I was like trying to get her to respond to something, and then I put on One Less Lonely Girl by Justin Bieber, and immediately like her ears perked up, and she like
Mm-hmm.
sat up in the seat. We were singing together, and then the rest of the car ride, her and I we were singing Disney Channel original songs. We were singing Jonas Brothers. We were singing a song from Camp Rock,
Yeah.
and it was really nice
Yeah.
to be able to sing with my sister, and especially knowing that it helped her in some way, made me feel infinitely better about you know being the music guy.
Yeah.
To always, that's always a solution that I think of is how can I use music to make this situation a little bit happier.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Is that, music is such a, whether it's just music, or music and words, lyrics, it's just amazing how therapeutic it can be.
Yeah.
Whether you just need to calm down or you need to jam out in the car by yourself and scream at
Hmm.
the top of your lungs.
Yeah, just take your mind off stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So besides music, I know
Hmm.
you have a podcast that you do with your friend, and I hope I'm not going to torture the last name, but is it David Capusha Capusha? I even
Okay,
put how to pronounce it here.
that's okay. You know what? He wouldn't. Him and I share that, where both of our last names um are very long
Yeah,
and European. So my buddy David
Capushiage.
Capuchiars,
Oh, Capushiage.
um,
Okay.
yeah, he and I, we've been friends since second grade, and he was actually one of the buddies that I mentioned earlier who would pressure me to listen to Metallica and nothing
Hmm.
else. And him and I, we've grown a lot over the years, and one day we have this relationship, this friendship, where there are some times where we like finish each other's thoughts. And we were on a long drive to a concert or a movie or something, and I mentioned the idea. I forget which one of us mentioned it, but we were talking about starting a podcast, and the other one was like, what would we even talk about? What would the
Yeah.
podcast be about? Like, there always has to be a niche. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, could be like, could be, talking about like whatever, or like
Hmm.
maybe we could talk about cars. And the other guy is like, we don't know anything about cars, right? And I was like,
Yeah.
but I could be like Nick Scarpinato. And then immediately he was like, I could be David Capucha cars. And I was like, all right, it's happening. We just gotta talk about cars, I guess, or anything but cars. And
Yeah.
so that's where the name came from, was too bad we didn't get into cars, because like we can't
Hmm.
talk about cars, but we can talk about everything else. So yeah, we talk about like our favorite movies and music and video games and lighthearted stuff, and we get to talk about stuff from our childhood that each of us remembers about the other's
Hmm.
life. And it's a very cathartic experience, just to like be able to laugh with him and share that with folks. And not that I ever thought, usually I'll think about like creative decisions
Yeah.
like that being opportunities. And I've learned to kind of separate the business creative things from the fun creative things. So
Hmm.
whenever we record the podcast, like we're just having fun.
Yeah.
People listen to it, like awesome, great. But it's also, I think it's more so for us. And if
Yeah.
people like what we're doing, then feel free to check it out, the Too Bad We Didn't Get in the Cars podcast.
Yeah, I think it's always when you're artistic or creative, you're not going to please everybody, right? Because
Right.
they're not in your mind. They don't know what you're thinking or why you thought of this. But
Right.
I don't know if you know the comedian Andy Kaufman. He passed away. He
I
was on
do.
tax.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
him and his friend Bob Zamuda, which he wrote an awesome biography about Andy.
Oh
They
sure.
would just do things to crack each other up, and everybody else may have thought of it was really dark and
Yeah.
silly or stupid, but that was their goal. Just we're gonna laugh and other people laugh with us, then wonderful. So
Yeah.
I think that's important when you've got a little bit too much of a creative mind.
Yeah, when it's
Yeah,
just going all over the place.
you'll attract the right people eventually.
I agree.
So like you mentioned earlier, you live all the way out in Aurora,
Mhm.
which if you're in Aurora, it's not all the way out there, but if you're in Chicago, it is. And
Right.
you're coming to Chicago, and I know you're going to be going on tour pretty soon because you're got a new EP coming out.
I do.
Um, but so number one, thank you for driving all the way out to Chicago to do School Street Social. But,
Of
how
course.
much time do you spend in the city or traveling around to other gigs? What are some of the other places you go to?
Yeah, so I would say I it's a pretty even split. I would say maybe
Mm-hmm.
60% is spent closer in suburbs around here and 40% is spent in the city because my parents still live in my old neighborhood. Before I moved out, we were in Midlothian, Illinois, which is sort of
Mm-hmm.
near Orland Park. It's on a
Yeah,
good day, it's like 30, less than 30 minutes outside the city
with
and
no traffic.
with no traffic,
Yeah,
right? Which rarely ever happens.
yeah,
But I like to tell people that just to convince them, like, no, no, that's not
yeah,
too far from me.
yeah.
It's fine.
Keep on going. Keep on going.
Um, yeah, and so whenever I'm in the city, I will try to go to the Uncommon Ground open mic. They are a great place for budding musicians, veteran
Mhm.
musicians alike, artists of any kind, really. They're very supportive of the community, and they hold this open mic competition every twice a year. And I only
Mhm.
put quotes around competition because like there are placings and there's like a first, second, and third, but I find that just getting to connect with artists in that way in the city is more valuable than any sort of prize that could be offered.
Mhm.
And so that's a cool place to go to. Let's see, the Gallery Cabaret in Bucktown and the Savannah Luncheonette, both in Bucktown, down the street
Okay.
from each other. I perform at semi frequently. I have a booking agent who does stuff out here in the suburbs mostly, but every once in a while she'll get a gig for me at Savannah Luncheonette or a suburb closer to Chicago. And so I appreciate having the connection to my family closer to Chicago and also being able to operate out here. I think it's opened a lot of doors having both of those spots because if I'm ever in the city and I don't want to drive all the way back to Aurora, I'll just call up my mom and I'll be like, "Hey, can I spend the night tonight?" And she's like, "Yeah, of
Yeah.
course, dude. You don't even have to ask."
Yeah.
Um, and it still lets me hang out with my friends that I've made out there and stuff like that too. So yeah, probably 60-40 split,
Yeah.
if I had to say.
Hopefully, you have a car with good mileage.
Oh yeah, got a Toyota Camry 2013 Toyota
Okay.
Camry SE. So we got I don't actually know if it has good mileage. I don't know anything about cars.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, so I can't say for sure, but it gets the job done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as long as it gets you there safely.
Yeah, right?
So, besides feeling that they're serenaded to,
Mm.
how do you hope that your audience feels after they see you perform or listen to your songs?
So I don't know. I went a lot of time spending trying to get people to feel happy after listening to my
Mhm.
songs. I wanted to I would get people to ask that would ask me similar questions. They were like, "What's your thing? What's the thing that makes Nick Scarpinato different from other musicians?" And I would tell them, "Well, all my songs are a reflection of me, and I'm very upbeat and positive and happy." And so I want other people to feel happy when they listen to my music. And I learned over the years after being asked that for the first time that I feel like it's a blessing when people feel anything listening
Mm-hmm.
to my music, because the
Yeah.
alternative would be hearing my, my words or my music, and turning a turning a blind eye to it because it doesn't make you feel anything, or it's very bland and it's very non-emotive. And
Mm-hmm.
so I stopped trying to cater to a specific emotion in my writing, and instead I just took whatever I was feeling and put it on the page. And whenever I play it, I don't ever have an expectation, just because I feel like for me it's unfair to ask someone to feel a specific way.
Yeah.
And I can only do so much to present my music to someone, and after that it's out of my hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've had people in an audience where I've played, I've had people cry after listening to songs that weren't supposed to make them cry, but
Mm-hmm.
it was just how they felt that specific moment listening
Yeah.
to that specific song. And it's beautiful to acknowledge how little control I have
Yeah.
over how people feel, because music and art is such a personal experience,
Yeah.
and getting to see that in any way, shape, or form is a huge honor for me. So my goal is to get people to feel anything, really, even
Yeah.
if they listen to my stuff and they're like, I hated that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Something. It's something.
at least that's something. At
Yeah.
least I know, like, I elicited an emotional response in
Yeah.
that person. So I'm going to consider that a win.
Yeah.
And then it makes them angrier, and it's a whole argument on Instagram or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, whether they like hey, I like the music, I like his voice, I
Yeah.
love the lyrics, or they hate you
Yeah.
afterwards.
Right.
I mean, if they feel something.
Yeah.
But okay, that's awesome. Great answer.
Thanks.
So, you are, I think we touched on this a little while ago, but just to
Mm-hmm.
dive in a little deeper, you're actually in the middle of recording your second EP, Golden Part 2, right?
Yeah. Correct.
And then you're going to be doing a little small Midwest tour beginning at the end of this month.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the stops that you plan to be making along the way? Where can
Yeah.
people find you?
So I'm working with the amazing Mirabelle Skipworth, who I met while going to school in Decatur. And then she moved to, she moved back here to Aurora and started just doing the thing while I was learning how to do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she cultivated a community for herself and for others. She started booking at different, she started booking on behalf of different venues. And now she's based out of Pittsburgh, where she's doing the same thing, but on a bigger scale. And she's going on tour all the time. And rightfully so, because her music is fantastic and the folks that she surrounds herself with are fantastic. And I'm honored to have been considered one of those people that she chose to work with. So
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to her a couple months ago and I said, "Hey, Mirabelle, what are the chances that I could go on tour?" And she was like, "Very high. Like, in fact, I'll plan a tour for you. We'll have a call, discuss details." And now, all this time later, I am very, very fortunate to be able to say that I'm going to be doing a small Midwest tour, because it's something
Nice.
that I've always wanted to do. And it's not until I get to that moment where I want to be that I don't know if it's because I'm always looking forward and I'm always thinking about the next thing, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm always afraid to take the position that I'm in, and the job that I get to do for granted. So, getting to talk about it always helps kind of keep me grounded, and make me
Yeah.
realize, yeah, this is really cool that I
Yeah.
get to do this. So I get to, I'll be playing in Pittsburgh, because
Mm-hmm.
that's
Oh, very
that's an
cool.
easy place for Mirabelle to book. That's, I think, the farthest out.
Yeah.
And then we're stopping in Ohio, Indianapolis, St. Louis, Nashville, Memphis, and then at the end of tour, I'm going to be going up to Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and then having a sort of homecoming show on Sunday, June 4th, and that's going to be in Plainfield in the afternoon. So,
Okay.
a bunch of places that I hope to eventually go back to, and I'm hoping to make some connections out there with the musicians that I get to play with and the fans that I get to that I play to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's shaping up to be a good time. I've never been more nervous to have the best week and a half of my life.
Yeah,
But it's going to be great.
I'm sure you'll do awesome.
Thanks.
Break a leg, right? Is that basically?
Thank you. I might even break both if I have to.
Pittsburgh. I haven't been to Pittsburgh in quite some time, but I remember having a good time there.
Sure.
It's a big city, but it's a little city, you know.
Yeah, right.
But let me know when you're playing there because I have a friend that still lives out there.
Oh, no
I'd love
way.
to have him go and check you out.
Awesome. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. How was it working on Golden Part 2 versus your first EP?
So the first one was there was more of a time crunch because I'd set
Mm-hmm.
a deadline for myself. Me and my producer Gray Taxon, who works at Gravity Studios in Chicago, he and I also went to school together. So kids, it helps to go to college,
Yeah, connections.
because
A
you can
lot
know
more about connections than you think.
yeah, right. So I met Gray in school, and he's a year older than me, and he's a whiz of an engineer,
Mhm.
and also an amazing guitarist. He'll be humble and he'll say, I'm not that. But all of my guitar parts on my songs are done by him, and all of
Okay.
the production and the mixing. So the first time that we worked together, there was a definitely a spark of optimism, but I wanted to release it on my golden birthday, which was October 26th, 2021.
Okay.
And I was turning 26, and we were working on it in like February. We started working on it, and I was like, what are the chances that we can finish like a 10-song album by October? And he was like,
Hmm.
I don't know. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
And then we got one song done by July. and and so that first EP was because of me, it felt way more rushed than I think it deserved to. And so with the second one, I told myself and I told Gray, I said, hey, there's no deadline for this one.
Hmm.
I want us to get it done as it happens. And and he's constantly working on other projects, and I've made it a point to start looking out for more shows and start doing music full time. And so we've both been kind of focused on other parts of our careers for a while. And only recently was it that we came back together, and I was like, okay, so the demos and the tracks that we've worked on so far, what are the odds that we can get this done by like the middle of the summer? And he was like, pretty good, because we're doing four songs on this next EP, and one of them is done. So
Okay.
um, so this time around, it feels a lot more relaxed, and we're taking our time with it. And I feel like once it's released, it's going to be that much more gratifying to go back and listen to for me, because I'll know compared to that first time, this one had a lot more patience poured into it.
Hmm.
And I'm hoping that it sounds that way for folks
Yeah.
listening.
Awesome.
Hmm.
And that's why, as an artist, you only get better, right? Each experience
Yeah,
is different. You
that's
learn from the last one.
that's the goal, at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And at the moment, any time that I've recorded anything, I've told myself, man, this is the best that this song is ever going to sound. And
Yeah.
then a year later from it or whatever, I go back and I listen, and I'm like, well, maybe we can change
Okay.
this thing and that thing
Yeah.
or whatever. But it's already out, so it's out of my hands.
Yeah.
And then like you said, you can only hope to go on to the next thing
Yeah.
and learn from the past and continue to grow. I hope by
Yeah.
the time I'm 80, if someone were to ask me if I've gotten better, I hope to stay humble and age with grace, and be honest with myself and say, no, there's still a lot that I have to learn, but like
Yeah.
I'll continue learning until I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So
And I think that's a great thing, as you continue to perform as an artist, something that you wrote when you were 2025, you can perform it in a different way, and even though
Yeah.
it may not be, on a record, on an album, at least you have an audience that can appreciate it in a different way than they originally heard it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just like how we mentioned earlier, how an audience, because listening to music is a very personal experience. It changes person to person. I love how songs that I wrote, like you said, when I was 20, 25, I
Mm,
play them now, and they they sound completely different, and so I play them completely different,
yeah.
and it's I love getting to see, I love getting to watch my songs grow with me
Mm,
as I get older, and it really separates like the good songs from the songs that were maybe written too much in the moment and only really served to to describe how I was feeling in a very specific, time. But I have a song called Tennessee that begins with the line, "Here I am at 23," and I wrote it when I was
mm,
23. Now I'm 27,
yeah.
and I every time I play it, I always think, before it used to be a like a me taking a picture of my life at that time, but now I play it and it's like opening up the time capsule and seeing that photo and noticing different things in the background, and it's
Yeah.
it's it's a beautiful, every time I play that song, I notice something different about it, or I notice a little thing that I'm like, I could change this,
Yeah.
and it's cool to get that perspective.
Yeah. And you're talking, and I'm also kind of reminiscent of, songs like Four Non Blondes, 25,
Yeah.
and the other song, What's My Age Again, Blink 182. And
Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's you can be playing that song when you're 50, 60, and it just kind of brings you back to that time in your life when either you heard the song or you were that age. And it's perfect when it syncs up to, hey, this song came out and I was 25.
Yeah.
But that's also, yeah, this is
Yeah.
such a great way that we can connect with music and songs.
100%.
So last question here.
Okay.
And I hate to get serious on you
Oh, sure.
for a moment, but I hear you love breakfast
So much.
so much.
So much.
So two-part question.
Okay.
Number one, sweet or savory? And when you go to a new restaurant, what's that one meal that you have to order every time?
Okay. So to answer your first question, uh, man, I thought I'd be more prepared for this. I got two in my head about the setup, and I was like,
Yeah,
how do I be serious about this? Because it is a serious topic. I feel like
it is
breakfast
very serious.
breakfast is very overlooked. I
Yeah,
I cannot tell you how frustrated I get when I talk to someone and I ask them about breakfast and they say, "Oh, I don't ever eat breakfast."
yeah.
I'm like, "Are you kidding? That's like the best time
Literally
of
the
the
most
day."
important
It's
meal of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you would ask me maybe a year ago, I would have said sweet all the way. You
Hmm.
got like Pop Tarts and toaster strudels. You got pancakes.
Yeah,
You got waffles. You got cereal. And then now, as a 27-year-old with really bad acid reflux, I have to remind myself, all right,
yeah.
maybe sweet every once in a while. So definitely savory. I'm a
Okay.
big bagels guy. I'm a
Hmm.
big eggs and cheese guy. And it's usually on days where I have maybe like a donut or a Danish
Hmm.
or a sweeter breakfast item. It's always on a day where I'm treating myself.
Yeah,
I'll go to Dunkin' and I'll say, yeah, let me get this let me get this cold brew coffee. And I've been good this week, so I'm going to
yeah,
take a vanilla long john too, and then immediately regret it after. But
yeah,
that's the beauty of of desserts, is
yeah,
the what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It comes and goes so quickly, and
yeah,
but it stays with you all day, and you're in pain all day.
yeah.
But yeah,
The gift that
my
keeps on giving, right?
yeah, even if you ask it politely to stop.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I think the second question, my go-to breakfast dish, my
Hmm.
okay. I cannot pass up a good skillet.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever had a bad skillet.
Hmm.
Either, you have a meat lover skillet, you have like, um, You have, like the Santa Fe omelet thrown into a skillet with like the
Hmm.
avocado and like the peppers and yeah, and I feel like it's the best of everything, but like in one convenient
Yeah.
package.
Yeah.
Um, some people might look at a skillet and be like, "That is gross." I
Yeah.
like keeping my things separated, but I'm like, they're all going to the same stomach anyway.
Yeah.
Might as well, all get an Uber together and
Yeah.
carpool down there.
And you
Makes
get
it
the pancakes
easier.
on the side, and you got your sweet and savory together. So.
Yeah. Or I will say, this is kind of a tangent, but I discovered about myself a couple years ago. I will take any opportunity to turn something into a sandwich. So
Okay.
if I have like, bouncing off of the last question, if I have a
Mm.
skillet and I have a pancake in front of me, I'm not going to eat them separately. I'm going to put the contents of the skillet in the pancake, roll it
Yeah.
up like a burrito, and eat it that way.
Yeah.
If I have some like maple syrup to dip that into, or if I have some like zesty breakfast sauce, I'm going to do it
Yeah.
because I like holding my food. I feel like it makes it that much more personal.
Yeah.
Um,
Putting the effort
yeah.
in than just a fork.
Oh yeah, well, because using a fork and knife to eat something, it feels very formal, feels
Yeah.
very professional.
Mhm.
It's like this is a transaction, and this is the separation. Whereas with eating food with my hands, I'm like, no, 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 we're in this together.
Yeah.
Like we're
It's
we're both going down. So I'm just gonna enjoy it while it lasts. And you're not to. I feel like this is getting a little. I think I'm getting a little off track, but
Oh no,
anyway,
you need the full on experience, the
yeah,
hands on
I
experience, pun
the
intended.
hands exactly, and
Yeah.
people don't understand that. So I'm glad you understand me, Rick.
Yeah, I do. I do. You ever hear of or ever read the old comic strip Blondie?
No, I don't think so.
No, this was like going decades back. But they also had
Sure.
like a radio show and a TV show, and it was called the term that was coined was a Dagwood sandwich. And you might see some like old diners that had the Dagwood sandwich, and that's basically like whatever was in the fridge. Like that late night snacks, like whatever in the fridge, put it between bread, and there you go.
Yep. Yeah, it's very, very humbling to
Yeah,
make things into a sandwich.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, I cannot thank you enough for taking some time out of your day and your very busy schedule to chat with us. I absolutely, and I know the people that came to watch you last year, we're looking forward to this year because we love your sound and the energy that you bring to the stage. So I'm glad to have you back. And
Yeah.
again, everybody, Nick is going to be playing with us at School Street Social on Saturday, June 3rd. We start at 3 o'clock. I think you're taking the stage a little later, closer to 5. Uh,
Okay. Cool.
but anything you want to share with the folks before we wrap it up?
Hmm. Well, I just want to say I'd like to thank not only my mom and dad, but also my parents
Mhm.
for having me here. No, but seriously,
Yeah,
Rick, thank you so much for not only having me on this call right now, but also trusting me to come back to School Street and put on another good show. I know I'm gonna have a good time. So anyone out there who is able to stop by, you're in for a real
yeah.
treat. We got a lot of other amazing musicians on the bill as well. Sydney Richards, Sarah Geist,
Sunflower Summit.
Sunflower Summit. Cool,
Yeah.
because and there's is there going to be another
Zach's
identity
going
card
to
at
be
this one?
playing. I'm
Oh,
sorry,
that's right.
Z Frank's going to be playing.
Z Frank's going to be
Yeah.
playing. Yeah, and if anyone wants to keep up with what I'm doing, keep up with stops on the tour, you can follow me at Nick_Scarpinato on Instagram. I have a Facebook page, Nick Scarpinato Music, and I still have Golden Part One out
Nice.
on Spotify if you guys
Okay.
want to listen to it on Spotify, Apple Music, or all other platforms. So yeah, that's about all I got, I think.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Nick, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
See you in a few
All
weeks.
right. Take care.
You too.